CK Center for Knowledge Sovereignty has been there as a think tank for last 1 decade.
Background from Sherwood College, Nainital. Sensitive.
Not being heard unless your information, your ability to put out your information.
To institutionalize this method rather than just moving ahead in a mad way in the social media.
CK Center for Knowledge Sovereignty has been there as a think tank for last 1 decade. It has been precisely working in a very niche area, that is 5th generation technology and 4th industrial revolution. It focuses on cybersecurity, geospatial technology, analytics, sensors, machine learning, and challenges which have come in front of the humanity, in front of the governance, in front of the citizens in a democracy due to change in the technology. We believe that technology cannibalizes technology and also has impact on democracy. We also believe that democracy and upholding the rights of the democracy are not only the job of government, judiciary or administration, but also the intelligence and the think tank has a role to play. While industry does have many voices, so-called think tanks which come up and push their voices for their clients. Think tank purely believes, CKS believes that think tank should not be into part of promoting some company or some particular party. So twice in a year or thrice in a year, we come together, we put forward discussion. Post the discussion is done, policy papers are made, which are shared with the senior executives in the government, also to the administration, and a follow-up has been done. The famous program, Citizen 2030 and cybersecurity, is yet known to people from where various discussions have come up. CKS also is proud to present in front of the people book on the data sovereignty, which was written by 4 journals, 1 raw director and 2 civilians, which also became a talk within the parliament, outside the parliament, and at various forums. And we could see that many legislations, rules, policies are being discussed or are being draft formulated on the basis of this particular book. 2 books have come up on cybersecurity Citizen 2030, one which came up in 2017, which was a collection of articles written by veterans who are generally above major general level. And this time, which came up in 2019, also had people coming from CRPF, BSF, Air Force, BEL, and various other segments of the government, which deals with critical infrastructure or operations which are very critical to the democracy of this country. The think tank is led by Chairman Lieutenant General Shekatkar, who needs no introduction. The Vice Chairman of the think tank is Lieutenant General VM Patil. We have Honorable Air Vice Marshal Sinha as member of the think tank. Uma Sudhindran, she is Director of IIM Vizag. She is also a member of the think tank. We have various other people whose name I could go on, or otherwise you can go onto the website and see certainly who are the members of the think tank. What I would do now is, in the interest of the time, as you all have come here to listen to General Hasnain, I would request my colleague and member of the think tank, Shri Bolana Sharma, former Inspector General of BSF, to introduce our today's guest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my proud privilege and honor to introduce the speaker of the webinar series on information warfare in the age of digital network. I am proud to announce the speaker today is Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal with Bharat. He is among the most prolific writers and speakers on the issues related with national security. He belongs to the elite group of veterans who are revered, respected, and regarded as scholars, warriors. Commissioned in the Garhwal Regiment of Indian Army, in his career of about 40 years, General Hasnain has served in almost all kinds of turbulent environments, all kinds of hotspots, ranging from Sri Lanka to Siachen Glacier, Eastern Ladakh, from northeastern states to Jammu and Kashmir, and in United Nations operation from Mozambique to Rwanda. He has seen them all, and all were holding crucial assignments. He served 7 tours in J&K, decorated in almost all of them, and knows the J&K conflict very comprehensively. He commanded the Indian Army's Srinagar-based 15 Corps, the Chinar Corps. Today, he is one of the foremost writer and analyst on J&K, Pakistan, Middle East, political Islam, and transnational extremist violence. He is much sought after speaker, and he writes for major Indian newspapers like Times of India, the Indian Express, the Hindu, Deccan Chronicle, Asian Age, and the New Indian Express. It is indeed a pleasure to watch him in television debates on mainstream television. He has a unique quality to captivate his audience with his talk and his presence. With a strong academic background from Sherwood College, Nainital, St. Stephen's College, Delhi, the Royal College of Defence Studies and King's College, London, and the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Hawaii, US, he has been at the foremost of encouraging the adoption of the US-initiated scholar warrior concept in the Indian Army. He has spoken at the Lee Kuan Yew School for Public Policy, the Rajaratnam School for International Studies, and the Indian Institute for South Asian Studies, all at Singapore. He has also spoken at the International Institute of Strategic Studies, IISS, London. He is associated with Vivekananda International Foundation, VIF, and Center for Joint Warfare Studies, St. Joseph, as Distinguished Fellow. He is also on the Governing Council of Indian Council of World Affairs and Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. On 13th July 2018, the President of India appointed Lieutenant General Hasnain as Chancellor of the Central University, Kashmir. On 20th February 2020, he was appointed as member of National Disaster Management Authority of India, and he holds the status of Secretary to Government of India. He speaks on national security at various military, civil services and corporate institutions with a view to enhance India's strategic culture. To fulfill this need, General Hasnain has been leading the march engagement with major companies and corporate institutions, to name a few: KPMG, Deutsche Bank, SBI, Ashok Leyland, Mindtree, Larsen & Toubro, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and Reliance. General Hasnain has 6 decorations awarded by the President of India and 2 by the Army Chief. He is superannuated from the Indian Army in July 2013 after 40 years of distinguished. There is so much to tell the audience about General Hasnain. I am privileged to have attended many sessions, attended many of his seminars, and I will not be doing justice if I stay between General Hasnain and the audience. I will now request General Hasnain to kindly take over the stage. The stage is yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, CKS, for inviting me to this August webinar. I did not know enough about you. Now I know more about you. And obviously now I do feel that I'm really privileged to be speaking in such an August. Thank you so much. And you've given me a great subject, and obviously living up to your own core competence, which is essentially on cyber, on technology. So information warfare in the digital age obviously makes a lot of sense. Time now is about 6:40. I shall try and speak for about 40 minutes, a little more, a little less, to give a little time there for some questions. I had prepared a lot for you. I was hoping to make a PowerPoint, but I think my responsibilities in the NDMA got the better of me. I couldn't sit and make it, nor could I give it to someone to make it. So you will have to do without it. I shall just be only explaining certain aspects of information warfare as we understand it today, particularly with the challenges going on. As a start point, let me draw your attention to 2019, when Pulwama happened. 14 days later, or maybe 13 days later, it was that Balakot. And before that, 18th of September 2016, Uri happened. And immediately 10 days later, we had the surgical strike. I think no better example. This is the time when we suddenly found the digital space going alive. A tremendous amount of information moving around here and there, very difficult to discern what is genuine, what is not. But obviously, one of the major things on the day of the Pulwama strike, which was emerging, was from our adversaries across, it was emerging that the Pulwama IED strike, which we lost 40 of our brave hearts, was a false flag. It was a false flag event, and many people missed the whole idea in that messaging. What is a false flag? Most people didn't know what is a false flag. A false flag is nothing but an accusation to say that you killed your own men, that India was the one which had set its own IED to kill its own CRPF personnel so that it could paint the terrorists black and white, it could paint our adversary black, and tell the world, project our clean image to the world, and that is the act. It was everywhere. Balakot happened. I remember in Balakot, immediately you found everywhere, very few images coming from our side, but lots and lots of universities. So obviously, what was all this about? And particularly today in the digital age, what was all this? It was the use of information primarily to influence your mind. Not your mind alone, you're not the target audience alone, to influence the mind of the world. In any information warfare campaign, as I will explain later, there is a target audience. And the target audience should be analyzed deeply to see what content makes a difference to which part of it. So I thought let me start with this because it should be very clear to you that we are living in an age in which you are going to be subjected to this kind of a thing to change the mind and opinion of people across the world against you. You may have a certain belief, but everyone else is not going to believe you unless your narrative, this is the word which you commonly use today everywhere, your narrative is not being heard unless your information, your ability to put out your information is better than the adversary's ability to put out his narrative in the form of. This is what information warfare today in the digital age. I read a wonderful little quote in the morning when I was reading up for this talk, and it goes to say that digital information warfare threatens the ability of a nation's military. Listen to this again. The digital information warfare threatens the ability of a nation's military to interpose itself between the population and the enemies of the state. Now the public is directly impacted by psychological. This is what is happening with the information. This is what is happening in the digital. Otherwise, traditionally, what was the role of the army? What was the role of the security practitioners? What was the role of the Air Force and everyone in the security domain? It was to remain between your adversary and your population. Man your border, man the air, man the maritime zone, man everything so that the population is not impacted. You take the impact, your adversary delivers the impact, you take the impact. You deliver the impact back to him. You safeguard your population, you safeguard your... That has changed. That has changed with the digital. Because suddenly the capability, technological capability has been developed where an adversary can now maneuver around you and reach directly to the public, to the people, to the space behind you. And there is very little you can do about it. Professionally, obviously, you have to develop the tools to counter this, try and prevent it happening and minimize the impact and the effect. So, surprisingly, information warfare is not even a principle of war. Information is not a principle of war. Intelligence is a principle of war. And surprising. But I do believe that the time has come today when we will have to start looking at information as a principle of war. Otherwise, intelligence is only extracted from information. It is developed and processed from information. But information or raw information by itself today has become a weapon of war. It has become a very important domain of warfare. Let's take a few other examples here and there. Attempts at information warfare inside or outside the digital age. For example, today, if you see, the Chinese are making some vague, rather unprofessional attempts to try and impinge on the Indian public's mind. What are they trying to impinge? That 1962, we lost the war. This is the message which is being impinged on the mind of the people. And that the Indian Army's capability today is zilch. Zero. Is exactly as it was in that. Obviously, someone who is completely unaware, someone who doesn't read ever, someone who's unaware of anything in this world, on the military world or knowledge world, will start believing this. So the intent is to make someone believe it and to have no confidence in your government, have no confidence in your military, nothing. That again, this is a typical example of the manner in which it is happening directly to the people through various means, through social media, Twitter, Instagram, things like that, which we'll speak about a little later. So earlier, information warfare was all, even today, it's all about deception and manipulation. It's about deceiving the real intent which you want to achieve, to carry out, to instill a belief in your adversary, in the people, in your own army, in the media of the world. There are different types of targets that you have for information warfare. Each of them has a different kind of message which is reached out to them. You have great examples of, not necessarily in the information or the digital age, definitely even from the past, as to how information warfare was used so effectively, even without the digitization which we are seeing today. It was a challenge, but it was done. Classic example, 1973, Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, the launch of the Yom Kippur War, and the preparation which went on for 3 months, and the manner in which he kept putting into the newspapers, media, into the newspapers, that this year there will be a celebration, that this year on a particular religious day, leave will be given to the military personnel. 50% people can go on leave. They can even go on Hajj at that particular time and things like that. Now, all this was being put in there for a particular purpose, that it can be picked up by Israel. Picked up by Israel so that they imagine that the Egyptians are nowhere near preparing for a war against us. Because there were other preparations going on at the Suez Canal, which were giving indicators. The preparation of the embankment itself, the preparations of the exercises of the move to the canal and back, and all those kind of preparations were going on. But to hide that, this is the information which was put into the media. And see, it became believable. Later on, it emerged that the Israelis actually fell for it. They had actually felt that if 50% of your army is going to be on leave, who the hell is going to be preparing for war? So all these signs which you're seeing in front of the Suez Canal are just a humbug. That's the kind of deception that you can achieve if you choose to launch your information warfare in the correct. You see, it isn't. I still say that in the digital age, we are making a lot about the digital age, and there's no doubt that the coming of digitalization, the coming of social media, television itself, electronic media of every kind, it has helped proliferate the message. So much easier to be able to put the message out. Earlier, the challenge was, for example, Sadat had to get it printed in newspapers over a period of 3 months. Today, the same kind of a reach out, you can have to 1 million people in a matter of minutes, in a matter of hours. And it can be short content, it can be long content, it can be video in content, it can be all kinds of impactful ways by which it impinges on the mind and starts making a difference to the belief in the mind. Main challenge in this is not the technology. And I say this from my experience of using this very extensive in Jammu and Kashmir and in various appointments that I have held in my career. The main challenge in this is in the content. The content that you wish to generate and the message you want. Everyone thinks that you can pick up a mobile and become an information warrior. Sorry, you're a novice. You think that you can just pick up a mobile, if you've got a Twitter account or if you've got a Facebook account, and you can put a message on it, and you think you're doing national service. You think you're a part of a larger campaign of a national service. You're countering Chinese propaganda. Let me tell you, if you don't know how to do it, and if you are not trained to do it, if you don't have an idea, if you're not a professional, you will do more harm to your nation. You will do more harm to yourself. Nothing else. And you see this on Twitter every other day. You're seeing all kinds of mishmash of messages which keep floating around here and there with nothing, with no focus. And that is why it is so important to institutionalize this sport. You need to give it an institutional cover, and there has to be a method in the madness. Otherwise, the information domain is just open to anyone, and anyone can make use of it. But if you've got a focus, if you've got a campaign going, if you've got a focus, then you have to. There are different ways of doing it. Okay, so what do I consider? I consider some of the principles in information warfare which are applicable either in the pre-digital age or in the digital age, but including in the digital age very much. The first is, you can't have an information warfare campaign without an aim. Anything that you do in the armed forces always has to have an aim. So we start with that. So whatever is your aim, achieve something. You want to neutralize a certain idea. You want to neutralize a certain narrative. You want to deliver and strengthen a certain narrative which you have created. You want the believability and credibility of a certain action by your government or your army or by anyone else. You want to make that impinge on the minds of certain. So therefore, you have to select who are your targets, your target audience. Then you got to analyze your target audience. How well educated are the people? What is the cultural milieu of this area? For example, when the Americans came into Afghanistan, it took them years before they realized that they had done just no study, had no understanding of Afghan culture. So if you are in Afghanistan and you are fighting a war, or if you are fighting a proxy conflict like in Kashmir, where you are getting sponsored people coming from across the line of control and attempting to fight you and attempting to influence people in Kashmir to rise up against you, unless you know the culture of that place, unless you know the civilizational aspects of that region, you can't start fighting a information war. You can't start launching an information war because you'll be going all wrong. You'll be going in all different directions. You won't know what is the content that you need to follow. So this is a very important aspect, target analysis. You got to see the vulnerability, who is vulnerable and who is strong, based upon the strength of your messages. You will have to, as I said, social and cultural characteristics will have to be studied, content will have to be seen. You'll have to make sure that your content is subtle. There is nothing gained in being unsubtle, should I say, being brash, trying to speak from a position of authority and position of strength. This is what a lot of people like to do. You know, I'm from an institution, I'm from the army, I'm from the police, and I'm using my authority to launch a message. There's no credibility in your message. If you're using your rank, if you're using your status to launch a message, there's nothing subtle about it, and there's nothing credible about it. You got to see the period for which you got to launch this message, to launch this campaign. Will it be a single message which will keep doing the rounds? A single message will go around, come back in 24 hours, and this impact will be for 24 hours. Maybe it will be repeated a little bit more. Okay, 36 hours. Give it 48 hours. Now, if that's the only message you have, sorry, unless you've got a series of messages, a series of communications which you want to put, text which you want to. So obviously, it has to be a series of them as a campaign, each dovetailing into each other. 36 hours. Something is waning at 36 hours. Something is rising at. That's the way a campaign has to be developed. Then, of course, you want to also understand whether are you doing any disinformation. Because if you're doing disinformation, you've got to have credible and believable disinformation. I see what kind of trash which I see coming out from our adversary side, from the other side. Yeah, who's going to believe it? I mean, the kind of messaging which comes and the kind of handles, the kind of names. Therefore, the subtlety, the credibility, all this, no one has paid attention to it. Although I call our adversary a very, very professional information warfare handler. They do it very, just as an aside, to take a little deviation from my main talk. The ISPR, which handles Pakistan's complete information warfare communication strategy. Incidentally, the information warfare is names a matter of semantics. It's also called psychological warfare. It's called influence warfare or influence operations. It is also called perception management. I mean, give it the very subtle differences, all of them. But the ISPR, to come back to it, was raised in 1949. 1949. Everyone in India knows the ISI. No one knows the ISPR. Hardly people know the ISPR. But that is not the important thing. The important thing I'm trying to tell you is that information as a domain of warfare, as a domain of national security, someone on the other side realized it as early as 1940. In our side, it's not been realized, not been sufficiently realized. Now, today, thankfully, that you and I are talking about this. This is the coming of the realization that information is a domain of war, and that you can't separate it. You just can't separate it. It's a force multiplier when it comes to backup of your conventional, hybrid, unconventional, any effort which you put in. I shall come to those terminologies. Okay. And the last of it, last of the principles or characteristics is information overload. Be very careful about information overload. Don't put too much of it, don't put too little of it. It's just the right amount that you need to do. It's very important to work to a plan, design a campaign, which I shall touch a little bit at the later part of my talk. Okay, let's go on to the first, the modern. I count the time from where you can expect to classify modern information. Modern information warfare, to my mind, starts in 1990. Gulf War I. Gulf War I was the one time when CNN and the whole concept of embedded journalism came in. CNN entered into your drawing rooms. You saw Gulf War I live from your drawing rooms. So the manner in which the American forces were advancing against the Republican Guard of Saddam Hussein and things like that, which were going on. That was a huge thing which was happening in 1990. And the people who really took a lesson from it were the Chinese. The Chinese in 1993, within 3 years of the Gulf War, came out with a whole doctrine. The doctrine was called war under informationized conditions. War under informationized conditions. And in 1993, I had 19-20 years of service. I couldn't for the hell of it understand what is the meaning of informationized conditions. I just used to think that information warfare is a subset of warfare, not so relevant. It's from then that you realize, and today in 2020 you realize it. 1993, 27 years ago, they are the ones who took the lessons from it. By 2003, they came out with the concept called, or the doctrine called, three warfares. This is the strategy called three warfares. And in those three warfares, you have media, cyber, and legal. Psychological warfare is a part of the media, right? But you see, these three domains were given such importance. While you are having a strong conventional army, but why should you launch that conventional army into war? Why should you waste national resources if you can use a lot of other means to subjugate your adversary, bring him to his knees, and achieve your national aim? Perhaps in the year 2003, the means to do this, in particularly in the media and the cyber domain, was not so extensive. But progressively since then, things have really improved. And you find that in the year 2020, in the year 2017 in Dockland, the Chinese used psychological warfare, information warfare in a big way against us. You saw Global Times, which is the mouthpiece of the Chinese government. You found the People's Daily. You find all kinds, the National Defense University. Everything was being used. All of them were government institutions, government mouthpieces, which were being used primarily to impinge ideas onto your public, into the minds of your public. Okay, time is going by very fast, so I should just hurry up a little bit and come back to some of the important issues which may not be considered to be so important. Interestingly, just to take an aside from warfare, information as a domain of influence. You'll be happy to know I'm a member of the Prime Minister's Empowered Group number 8, EG8, on information and communication for COVID-19. We meet twice a week. We work out our strategy. Now, one of the things is that over the next 6 months, we feel that COVID will continue to be a major challenge. So what should be our information strategy to handle this? This is like information warfare. The enemy is COVID. The adversary is COVID in this particular. The means are the same. You still got all those digital means available with you. You got social media, you got television networks with you, you got telephones, you got everything with you, which is available. So how do you use it? That is the thing, the importance of being able to message. For example, one of the means with the opening of metro, one of the things that we thought about was a person is static sitting in the metro for 40 minutes, normally going from one place to the other. If the scroll on the metro screen, if it continuously gives them information on COVID, anti-COVID, wash your hands. 100 times it tells you wash your hands. 100 times it tells you to cover your face with a mask. Hopefully it will impact somewhere. It is the same thing. That is exactly what we are trying to do here. 100 times to impact an important message. The narrative is wash your hands. The narrative is social distancing. The narrative is stay at home if you don't have anything very important to do. Why are we doing it today? because we are finding that suddenly society is resisting. 5 months, 4 months, 5 months have gone past, and suddenly human nature is saying, I think we need to go back to the time that we had a good time, we were living in good times, right? So people start socializing, people start partying, and that's how the COVID, the pandemic becomes even. So this is what we're trying to control through all kinds of what is called IEC, information, education, and communication. Now the same principle is being used for warfare. The same principle is used for warfare. And the domain of warfare where it is most effectively being used today is not conventional warfare. Conventional warfare, as it is, you are aware, is something which of the past. I don't expect India and China to come to conventional war, right? Where you're having an army against an army. It is mostly to do with hybrid war. And hybrid war, as you're aware, is a war of different domains. Different domains picked up from the spectrum of warfare combined together to create a form of warfare. For example, it can be terrorism, use of terrorism, it can be use of financial conduits, it can be use of ideology, radical ideology, it can be use of drugs, arms and narcotics, as I already mentioned that. It can also be something to do with overground worker networks, all kinds of things like this, which go into the development of hybrid warfare, systems of hybrid warfare. So I think one of the very classic, 2 examples I'll try and give you. One of the classic examples of hybrid war and where digital information war has been used very effectively is Ukraine. That's where the Russians, what I know of the statistics, about $20 million spent for a short while, paid to about 600 people inside Ukraine to write, tweet, be on Facebook, be on Instagram, anything like that, and to keep writing positive messages about the Russian intervention and interference in Ukraine, pro-Russian. So that with this, the word spreads and it influences the people who may be sitting on the fence, or those who have not made up their mind, who are weak-minded still, influence their mind. The classic example, hybrid warfare in Ukraine has been fought very, very effectively by the Russians, and in that, information warfare has been the most important thing, communication strategy and information. Let me give you the next example, which I consider probably one of the finest examples of the use of information warfare and communication strategy. And that is by Daesh, ISIS. ISIS came out in 2014, raised from where? They were essentially the elements of the Republic in Iraq, which had been, the whole structure had been dismantled, and the prime personalities in that had gone away without any idea as to where they went. And no one was keeping a track on them. Some of them were very well educated, technically very sound. People had studied abroad and things like that. This is one of the lessons of war, where at the end of the war, in conflict termination, make sure that people who are under your control from your adversaries, you know everything about them. Otherwise, you created a second genie. And this is what the Americans did. They created another genie. They created al-Baghdadi. And al-Baghdadi set up the world's slickest information war. Right? Today also, al-Baghdadi and al-Baghdadi is supposedly dead. No one can confirm it. But the ISIS, everyone is presuming the ISIS is gone and out, is dead. But I know for one, the ISIS lives in a networked condition, in a networked kind of status. The Al-Qaeda is only a guest artist in Afghanistan, but their presence internationally is on networks. Almost everything, all their coordination, all their training, all their planning, education, everything is being done on networks. The digital age is providing them the means to do that. Similarly, the ISIS. Now, what did the ISIS achieve, for example? The ISIS example, the ISIS example classically, 40,000 foreign fighters came into Iraq and Syria to fight on behalf of ISIS. Can you imagine the change of the mind, how ISIS would affect the minds? And not all were Muslims. Many of them were Christians. Many of them were from different faiths. And they were from all regions of the world. People came from Xinjiang in China. People came from Chechnya. People came from North Africa. People came from Central Asia. And people came from the Western world, the US, UK, France, Belgium, and Spain. From all over the world, people came. How did they manage to affect this? And if you remember, the first Twitter handle which was caught, the ISIS Twitter handle was caught, was a person with a handle called Shami Witness. If you remember, Shami Witness. Where was he operating from? From Bangalore. 8 months later, he was caught. He was caught from Bangalore. He handled the premier ISIS handle was handled by this chap, Shami Witness, from Bangalore itself. They had money, and they had money in the banking networks around the world. They were dealing with drugs and drug trade around the world. They seemed to be having all weaponry. Weapons came and weapons went, and weapons were used everywhere. Weapons which were supposed to be consignments to other parts of the world. Those weapons somehow they managed to get them into their own territory. So they had really got the entire thing under their control, and they had a magazine, one of the slickest online magazines called Dabiq, D-A-B-I-Q, Dabiq. It was an attractive magazine, slick. It was also published in a print form, and it was primarily projecting the whole ideology of ISIS. People used to wonder. People like me wondered what was so attractive about the ISIS ideology. I mean, why should a Muslim, a normal Muslim, a Christian, anyone, why should they get attracted to this? The use of violence in such a subtle way, conveying that message that a person was automatically attracted to. People who are well-to-do, how they change their minds. A sense of nihilism, which is, that you are fed up with the world and you want to get something into an alternative line of thinking. That's the kind of. So this is a classic case of information warfare, which the ISIS followed, and I think it needs a model which needs to be studied for long by lots and lots of people. Now, what is let me just look into the and bring in another terminology besides hybrid. Besides you talk about conventional warfare, in which IW plays a very important with networks spread out. You impinging on your messaging on the minds of the soldiers, senior commanders, on the public at large. You will see much of this if India and China ever come close to a war. We are not anywhere near a war at the moment. If you come close to a war, you'll find a lot of this will happen in the conventional domain. But what I want to talk about is a new form of war which is being spoken about a lot today. It's a very subtle kind of war called grey zone warfare. It's a step above hybrid, where hybrid also uses, it uses violence, it uses physical means and things like that. Grey zone is primarily a type of warfare for only influence. Primarily, it actually using information warfare's primary characteristics most subtly. For example, what the Russians did in 2016 with the American presidential campaign, what they are attempting to do now, and what the Chinese may attempt to do in the next 2 months in the United States, this has all been possible, facilitated only because of digitalization, the outreach. Otherwise, the Chinese have an idea, the Russians have an idea, they want to influence. They can pump in a lot of money, maybe perhaps, but money in cash, no, not possible. Today's world, money can be in digital form, ideas can be in digital form, everything, ideology and thought can be in digital form. Everything is there in digital form, which reaches there and influences. It influences the whole campaign. So obviously, you've got an important country, a superpower, suddenly, and you think that there are if not the president, then there are some other leaders, and there are important players, there may be legislators, congressmen, and senators, and things like that, and you are influencing them through the digital means. This is a typical thing, entering into the politics of a country, changing ideologies of a country, creating dissensions within a country. A lot of people say that much of what is happening with this Black Lives Matter is a doing from somewhere, from some part of. No one has evidence to say that which part of the world, but somewhere from where it is being originated to create a level of disarray, mayhem in the streets of the United States, and that is something which you have to be careful of in your own country, in our own country. We are a diverse nation, multi-religious, multicultural, multi-caste, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic, all kinds of things that we have got, combinations. You can't find a nation like ours and beautifully webbed together. But this entire thing a lot of problems can be created for us. And it can be created from across by one adversary, or it can be created by the northern adversary. From any of the adversaries can create this problem if you are not. Okay, so one of the very important aspects in this whole age of information warfare, the digital age, is that you can no longer leave this to be just a loose notion and idea of being just one domain of it. It needs a conceptualization, it needs a formalization, it needs an embodiment, which means essentially it needs a structure. You need to create a structure. There are lots of models around the world. The ISPR is a structure. The ISPR is a classic example of a structure which has been put together to play the information game, impinge on the minds of your adversaries or influence the minds of the people in your own country. So what kind of a thing can you do? I have often thought about this very deep. And my experience of trying to play information warfare in a very positive way to influence minds of people to be more nationalistic, more patriotic, to look at, consider your army, consider your people, consider the growth of your nation and things like that, and look at the unity of your nation and all this. Now, we started playing this, I remember, in one organization where I was there to try and bring this up together. Let me tell you the issue which I stated right in the beginning. In 3 days' time, some of my officers who were doing it came to me and said, "Sir, sorry, sir, we have nothing more to put out. We have no text. We have no ideas." So what I want to tell you is that the means are all there. The resources are all there. The means of communication are all there. The content is not. The ideas are not there. Because no one has conceptualized the plan. Unless you conceptualize it and then read about it, bring in knowledge, only then can it happen. So my strong belief, couple of things. You need to first of all put up a structure. I think it is needed at the national level. Then it's needed maybe at the state level in some of the border states. Because it's not only in the domain of border warfare or domain of conventional warfare, it is very much there as a part of internal security. So it's needed in some of the states also. It is not the domain. Whose domain is this? That's the whose domain is it? Is it the armed forces? Okay, border area is fine. In the central organization, maybe in Delhi, a big footprint of the military can be there for guidance, because after all, it is a form of warfare, and you will use it against external adversaries many times. So you read it. But as much as the armed forces, you need people from intelligence, you need people from the police, you need a lot of researchers, a lot of academics, people who will study, read, create models, study models around the world, analyze them. You need psychologists, you need, who else? I mean, all kinds of people. You need people from the business world who tell you a lot of things about the corporate sector itself, and how for example, you may be at the receiving end of economic warfare in the very near future. So you need to know more about this, and you need therefore economists, and you need business people. So you need advice of every kind. It's not just a lot of people think that information warrior is putting together 10 officers into a room, giving them mobiles and telling them start off. It's not like that. It's a science. It's a scientific thing which has to be thought through completely. How long will it run for? What is the aim? What is the concept? This, that, all this has to be thought through. And then these warriors, these information warriors, to my mind, cannot be people in uniform. People in uniform have got tenures. People come for 2 years, 3 years everywhere. By the time you learn the mechanics of this domain, which is a specialized domain, you're out. So no, I don't experiment with that kind of a thing. What I would love to see is permanent civilian warriors, civilian information warriors without you. And young people who understand technology, sharp minds, and they are from different domains, as I explained to you already, different domains of academics itself. And they come together under some body, someone on structured body in which you put together a campaign, work it out, learn your lessons, have case studies, things like that, and keep reviewing it from time to time, learn your lessons and progress. I love to call such a body as a communication strategy board. Like you can have Niti Aayog, you can have NDMA, authority like mine, which I work, NDMA. You can have all these constitutional bodies. So you can also have a constitutional body, which is a communication strategy board. The ISPR, after all, I'm sure the ISPR has got a constitutional. Yeah, it is very much constitutional. It's part of the Pakistan Army, so I suppose it has got a constitutional sanction base. So these are some of the things which I thought were important to put across to you. Most of it I tried to explain to you in a very practical kind of a way. So at the end of it, what is the need today? You need. I think just like the three organizations, cyber, you've got a cyber agency now in headquarter IDS, you've got a cyber agency, you've got a special forces agency, you've got something that is called special forces or some organization, and you've got a space agency. I think there's a requirement for an information, which should become the repository of not all information, but playing the national information. It can start with external, subsequently it can be worked on internal. I think we need to, in the Indian Army, we need to go back to 2004. I don't know who it was. Someone gave the orders to the raising of information warfare brigades, and in 1 year's time, those information warfare brigades were dismantled and made into electronic warfare groups. I thought the IW brigade was a brilliant. You see the British Army, they've got 77 brigade with them, the Chindit, so-called Chindit brigade, today is the information warfare brigade. You need something like that. As a part of the conventional, the Indian Army is conventional and hybrid warfare, information warfare. As I said already, you need civilian information warriors as a part of this concept. You need a backup of data miners. I think data mining is something which will have to be done. I mean, this is something which is your organization specialization. There is so much of data in this world today, and that so much of data going around that intelligence today needs to be based upon so much of data mining. And I think finally this should be treated as a separate profession by itself. Information is a separate profession. Like the Chinese in 1993 brought in the whole concept of war under informationized conditions. I would like to see the Indian Army convert this, the Indian Armed Forces converting this, and ultimately the nation converting this to a specialized profession. I hope that my words will come true within one. Thank you very much. I have finished.
Thank you, sir. It was wonderful listening to you. Like you rightly said, that today information warfare and psychological warfare have become perhaps more important than the normal kinetic warfare. And every country in the world is facing a challenge in this area. And disinformation and fake propaganda is something which is harming the nation more than anything else. I'll just briefly summarize a few points which are for the larger audience. You have spoken about the main challenge, which is the content and not the technology. Secondly, you have said that most of the times people get over enthusiastic on social media and they tend to use social media in a wrong way. And it is very important to institutionalize this method rather than just moving ahead in a mad way in the social media. Like you rightly said, that it is all about perception management, influence management, and we have also talked about several other adversaries who have used information management more effectively, and India has perhaps a long way to go ahead. We have seen that there are several channels, either through the international media or through different ways, who are trying to spread this kind of misinformation, and sometimes we lag behind because the efforts that we take to negate this information goes in a very different way. And you rightly said, sir, that we need to have a data mining of all the data that we are collecting, and the civilians or other domain experts and the capacity building in this area is very important right now to handle this kind of heavy and a bulk of information which is coming in, which may be coming in from outside India also with reference to matters within India, and this has to be treated as a separate profession by itself. And with people in the policy team like you, sir, I am sure that we will move ahead in this way in a very quick way. Sir, we have received some questions from people when they have registered for the event, and a few questions I have just compiled them together. So I'll take around 4 or 5 questions if you permit me, sir. With the first question, I'm going ahead.
Please.
So somebody has said that you had mentioned in some article earlier that India has always fought the terror or separatism in a benign way, where people's liberties are minimally disturbed, but security forces have suffered major casualties. But generally, when we see the narrative which comes, especially in the international media, it has been highlighted that the human rights have been violated in sensitive areas, and it has a very big impact on the international forums and the global scenario. And generally, we tend to negate this thing. And like you said, that this repetitive behavior of feeding this information again and again, and then many people retweeting or endorsing the view which has come about the human rights violations, it leads to a lot of difficulties for the Indian authorities as well as the security forces who are deployed at sensitive areas. So, sir, what is your view on this, and how can we counter this?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And I was to cover Kashmir separately actually, but I ran out of time. I'm glad this question has come up. In my experience, one of the biggest challenges for any commander in Kashmir fighting a hybrid war, a proxy hybrid war from across, war which was sponsored from across. One of the biggest challenges was the domain of human rights. I can assure you much of my time was spent on this aspect, sensitizing my command, sensitizing my units. I personally went and spoke whenever I had about 3,000-4,000 troops in my corps school. I would personally go and speak to them and tell them that, see, we have virtually controlled this whole problem. Now we needn't do anything which will worsen it in any way. And one of the most important aspects is to have the absolutely correct behavioral pattern that the armed forces, the army must follow. We always followed certain principles. Unfortunately, what happened was that a small benign incident here and there could be picked up. Now, the problem in Kashmir was that most people forget that there are networks everywhere. These networks have been established over a period of time. They are stronger than the networks of the security forces. And with the coming of digitization, and that's a lesson for your group itself, with the coming of digitization from about 2008 onward, you found that these networks got digitized themselves. So they became very invisible. They were very invisible. And you could see the manifestation of their effect. The manner in which the 2008, 9, 10 agitation was controlled. From 2013, with the coming of Facebook, the coming of other Twitter, etc., coming into Kashmir, you found the flash mobs, the ability to generate flash mobs and get them to encounter sites became so much simpler, so much easier. So the networks were everywhere. The digitization really came to their assistance in a very, very big way. And the aspect of human rights, again, the projection of this, all kinds of videos and all kinds of things which were put up, we were hardly countering it. No, there are ways of countering. One of the ways a lot of people advise is don't unnecessarily try and issue out a counter to something, because the counter attracts more attention, and it's the believability of the counter is not very high, and therefore the original message somehow has a higher level of credibility, and so we got carried away with it sometimes. But I strongly believe that this is where the professionalization comes. If you have got psychologists with you, if you've got people who are working on this kind of a campaign, any time an issue like this comes to the fore, you've got specialists working with you. You've got a psychologist, you've got a media person who understands this whole thing in the right language, with the right content, if this is put out. And over a period of time, you learn your lessons. For the first time, you'll make huge mistakes, but you'll keep on trying it. You'll succeed somewhere, and you start counting. This comes with experience over a period of time. I don't think we have done enough of it. And that is where my whole self-doubt used to rise, that we were too involved in the kinetic angle to it. The necessity was the kinetic angle is very important. You have to go after the terrorists, you have to go after the weapon, you have to go after things like that. But simultaneously, you have to work on the information domain. You have to counter these kind of accusations and allegations going around the world. You have to show the professional face of your army and your armed forces. We are one of the most professional organizations in the world. Rarely will you ever find anyone ever thinking of even touching making a wrong touch somewhere. No, never. I had given instructions in my time, directions. Even vehicles must ensure, drivers must ensure that if they are going through a puddle, the water from the puddle must not splash onto a woman who's walking on the road. It is to that extent I had gone. I said, we are a disciplined army. Look at our discipline. Look at the way we are trained. Look at the way we stand. Look at the way we speak. This is the projection we need to our own people. That is what is necessary. I hope that more and more people will work on this realization. This realization is coming, and more people will work on it, and we will succeed to a much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question is about the hacking which happens in the defense and critical infrastructure space. So there were some reports in 2006 and 2016 and 2018 about certain Pakistani and Chinese state-backed groups trying to hack Indian defense installations, especially the PLA and their secret unit 61398, what they popularly call it as. And they were trying to hack some intelligence and geolocation data. And this is something which we keep on hearing and knowing in the newspapers. Also, the US Department of Justice had also talked about the jet engine data hack by the Chinese authorities. So with the appointment of CDS now, do you, sir, think that a joint with the joint operations, is it possible to have something on the lines of these, that we just countering now, or we should be more proactive in our approach? And especially, does it fall under the purview of the CDS that something like this should happen in India? As well as a second question related to this is, when we talk about a national cyber security policy, are we prioritizing the defense in a different way, or we are trying to club the same policy for critical infrastructure also?
Thank you. I'll combine these questions together. Although these questions are actually a little, should I say, outside the domain of normal talks of this kind, because this essentially comes into the classified domain. But nevertheless, I shall just touch upon it. There is no doubt about it. Cyber is the domain today which is going to make a major. Whether it comes to conventional warfare, when it comes to no war, no peace. Remember, you think you are in peace. You think there is no war, and you think that there's a country which is friendly to you, doing trade with you, but at the same time, it is carrying out certain activities against you from time to time, collecting data, this, that, etc., preparing itself for. So even in no war, no peace conditions, and even in low intensity conflict situations and hybrid warfare conditions, you will be subjected to this. There's no doubt, in all domains, national domains of which are classified as essentially national security, or domains which are part of the overall nation, which makes up the nation. For example, your railway networks. Your railway networks are so essential for your movement of your troops. No one realizes how important the railways is to us in the army. You scratch an army officer, he will know lots of things about railways. Right? What about airlines? Right? What about supply chain? I mean, the supply chains themselves today are digitized. Right? These can be upset. So there is no domain of life today which cannot be subjected to cyber war. And cyber is a part of information warfare. As we see, it's a subset of it. So having said that, as far as I know, the amount of efforts going on in the nation outside the army. I used to think earlier that only in the army we're concerned about cyber, or armed forces are concerned about cyber, but the amount of efforts going on outside are tremendous. A lot of people tell me they're still not sufficient. But I, at the amount I mix with people, talk to people, I would not like to reveal who and with whom and to what extent it is, but I think you need to sit reassured that a lot of effort is going on in this domain. And the coming of the CDS, if nothing else, has initiated the process of better integration. I would say our integration is not. Our integration is fairly good. The coming of the headquarter IDS is now almost 19 years. Headquarter Integrated Defense Staff came together. They've really got their act, and they act as the repository for all these, non-kinetic kind of domains. All these three agencies, space, information, and special forces of forces, all three of them are under headquarter IDS. And particularly cyber, which is the Navy's, it is the Indian Navy's focus primarily. They do a great job on it. So I think we just need to rest it there. We need not go into details of it, because this is not the kind of issue or not the kind of platform on which we should be talking about India's cyber peace.
So one last question. Recently we have seen the Galvin Valley clashes, and from the public point of view, we saw reporting coming in from at various Indian channels, and various people have also written about the subject in newspapers or articles in magazines, and there are different versions. Somebody is saying that we went into the Chinese territory. Somebody says they came. It leaves a lot of confusion in the minds of public as to what happened. And after that, what you see is heated debates on the television channels, people politicizing it. So what is your view, sir? How should such things be addressed by probably the army or whosoever is responsible? Because if the communication is not coming properly through the channels, then it leads to a lot of confusion in the minds of general public. And when we try to, even though we try to believe everything what is coming, but we don't know which version to believe in.
Thank you. Good question. You do remember 1999, Kargil? And we had every evening a media briefing. And that time, Colonel Bikram Singh, later on General Bikram Singh, used to be the spokesman. He and the MEA rep, Mr. Sarna, I think himself, they were the two who used to appear on television and give out the day's activities. I honestly believe that those were times less complex. We were dealing with an adversary. We had clarity about the adversary. We had clarity about our mission, restore the line of control at that particular time, and there was no other ambiguity about it. So the information game was played very transparent. No, every situation is not the same. Every situation is not the same. The ongoing issue with China, starting from the 5th of May, is now almost 4 months old, almost 4 months old, is a completely different engagement. It's a different way of engagement. It's a different form of warfare. Not a shot has been fired. Shots have been fired the other day, I think, at Richinla or some place like that in the air. That's overall. Not a shot has been fired. Otherwise, in Kargil, within the first 7 days, there were Bofors which were flying, which were just firing away in every direction. Here, nothing has happened. You have used machetes. They have used all kinds of awkward weapons of the past and things like that, clubs and maces and things like that. Now, you see, in a situation such as this, you have to decide whether you want transparency or you want limited transparency, may I say, for the public. This situation has not come to an end. You have got to see a lot more happening in Eastern Ladakh, let me tell you. A lot more will happen in Eastern. And therefore, for the public at this time to demand complete transparency from the government, to my mind, I think is a degree of unfairness. Because information is important. Information is to be used in the subtle way, correct. And with the unfortunate politicization of this whole thing, I think we need to hold our horses. We need to hold our horses. Come whatever the situation 6 months later, when everything is hopefully settled. Although many people are telling me that this is a engagement which may continue like Siachen for very long. But hopefully the situation will come under complete control at some stage. There will be a lot of people. There will be some kind of a put out by the government. There will be a lot of people who will probably be privy to a lot of information, and it will all come out. The moment there's an ongoing campaign, an ongoing issue, an ongoing engagement to start, being transparent and putting out everything which happened 1 month, 2 months, 3 months before, somewhere or the other, it goes back against you. right? No one can put his finger to it and say that this will happen. No, you can't say it. That information may somewhere go against you. So it's best to hold your horses. And I think the public hunger for information needs to be satiated to some extent by, at the moment, remaining a little more quiet on this entire issue and trust your leadership, trust your government, trust your army. That's the way I would say.
Very, very rightly said, sir. So thank you so much. I think we have time only for this right now. We would have loved to listen to much more from you. In fact, you have covered this topic in a very, very elaborate way. You have talked about experiences from your personal life. You have talked about examples from the world about information warfare, and also highlighted the fact that India has to, move ahead in the right direction, probably have the civilian support also, and more institutionalization of this particular thing has to be done rather than jumping off to defend or counter every narrative. So this is very important takeaway that we have taken from your side. So thank you very much, sir. And it's our pleasure to host you on our platform at CKS, and we hope to have you back again for some other subject shortly, sir.
Thank you very much. My pleasure being with all of you, and wishing your organization Godspeed. Hope you turn out to be the ace organization in India on cyber. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just summarize. Yesterday we had Lieutenant General Dr. DB Shekatkar on this platform. And today we had Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain on this platform. And tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., that is 12 September, 6:30 p.m., we will be having Lieutenant General Gen Kulkarni on this platform, and he will be speaking on the same subject. So I request all the participants to join us tomorrow for this engaging session. And like yesterday and today, tomorrow also we will be broadcasting this live on our CKS Facebook page, and we will also be going live on YouTube and other channels. So please keep watching, keep supporting, and join us tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining in, all of you.